Welcome back to Walk with TLB. Tim Bryson here, and as y'all know, I'm a Black millennial who's eager to have unfiltered conversation with authentic people centered on international education, global sport, and Black culture. It's been a minute since we've had a conversation, and a minute since we've taken this walk on this podcast platform. I'm very excited to dust off the podcast mic on the recording platform and have a very important, very meaningful, very timely conversation that's focused on international college athletes. But as y'all know, I can't do this work alone. We can't do this work alone. And in fact, it's better to do it while in community. So today I brought in not just a friend, but also a soror and someone I've known for a very long time as a leader in this space and very well equipped to have this conversation. So without further ado, y'all help me, Katherine Thompson, to the show. Katherine, what's poppin', soror?
Hey, hey, how's it going?
Not too bad, man. Obviously, some technical situations that we had to work through. Shout out several different people who've helped get that done. But listen, man, very excited to see you. I'm excited to have
Yeah,
this conversation. One that we've honestly been brainstorming about now, like close to what, two
yeah.
months?
Dang, yeah, just about. Absolutely, yeah.
Very much so. Well, you know the plan, and people listening know the plan as well. And we're gonna get jump right in with segment one. And so, for those who either do know you or may not know you, in your own words, Catherine, what is your story?
So, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. My name is Katherine Thompson. I am the executive director of Spero Psychological Services. Now, that's who I am in a professional sense, mental health clinician. I do psych evals. I have a coaching program. I do immigration hardship evaluations. So that's that. But who I am as a person, I like to consider myself a hard worker, resilient, and someone who just does not quit. Now, I think where I get that from is being Colombian American and seeing my mom. Well, I didn't see it at that time, but she came to the U.S. when she was 19 with $20 in her pocket, and she tells the story. Sometimes like, oh, I have $5 in my pocket. I had 10, I had 20, but I mean, it's always funny in that regard. She didn't know not a one word of English, nothing. She barely knew how to say her name when she was asked, "Hey, what's your name?" And so what she did was she was determined to make a better life for herself. And honestly, she set the blueprint for all of us. So what she did was she graduated as a computer engineer. And back then, I mean, still now, it's a male-driven field. And the fact that she had the resilience, the desire, and then the wherewithal to do so, that's been my inspiration. That's what's guided the work that I do. I mean, I guess other things that I associate with is I'm a mom. I am a salsa lover, not so much the dancing, more so chips and salsa. I'm a native Spanish speaker. And yeah, I think honestly with what I do with Sparrow, it allows me to touch many different people's lives in many different ways, in the different lens of how I fight to eradicate mental health stigma and all the avenues in which I do that.
That's a blessing. That's a blessing. You said $5,
Yeah.
$20, it don't matter. She came here
Yeah.
literally some money, a
Yeah.
very little money in a dream.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, let me ask you, because
Exactly.
you kind of get to it, right? Obviously, talking about the inspiration of your mom's story and journey to the States. But even alongside that, like, what are some of the key moments in your life, like pivotal moments in your life that have helped to shape not just who you are, but also what you do and how you do it today?
Well, so I actually did a podcast earlier today. So that's an interesting question that you asked because it was similar to one that I answered earlier. So what's helped me, a pivotal point, was really understanding and being anchored in my why. Why be a full-time entrepreneur? Why be in the mental health space? And for me, the why is my daughter. Like, if I were working 9 to 5, there would be no way I could take her to gymnastics that starts at 5 or take her to swim that starts at 4:30. Just logistically, there would be no way. And not only that, I'm able to align what I do with what I'm passionate about. And a lot of times people can't do that within a 9 to 5 setting. So that was a pivotal point for me is understanding my why and taking that leap of faith and being a full-time entrepreneur.
Hmm. Okay, we getting there. We starting to warm up, and I'm glad that we're
Yeah.
starting to warm up in ways that are going to help to guide the conversation in segment two.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna ask one more question,
Hmm.
diving deeper into maybe more your personal beliefs and honestly your experience, obviously to this point, and asking you, what does it mean, and again, in your own words, to be the daughter of an immigrant, and like how does that show up, and how you show up day to day, week to week? month to month, etc.
I think being the daughter of an immigrant to me is grit.
Mm.
And that's what I do every single day. Like, okay, ooh, I don't know if I have it in me, but I'm going to. Do I know how? I don't know, but I'll figure it out. So that grit, determination, and work ethic, that was drilled in me growing up. And so her being the example for all of us, honestly, has given me the blueprint in which to navigate stuff like that. When I wake up, I'm like, dang, I don't have not a 1 ounce of motivation to get all this stuff done because being a full-time entrepreneur, you need to motivate yourself. You don't have deadlines per se. You don't have all that type of stuff. So then again, remembering, okay, well, if she can do it with 10, 5, $20 in her pocket and the resources that I've been, blessed with, I can do it too.
It's a blessing. I love it. I
Yes,
love
yes,
it. I
yes.
love it. And I'm glad your mom came. I'm glad your mom came to the States. I hope she's still doing
Yes.
well and whatnot. But before we transition to segment two, I had to write this question down. And for those that
Mhm.
have been on the podcast before, they know I don't write anything down per se. But I had to write this question down to help us frame
Sure.
the conversation in regards to why we're here today. This
Okay.
question is, I would love to start with another story, right? Alongside the
Mhm.
one you just shared about yourself. And from your work with immigrant communities, is there a moment or moments that really illustrates the challenges or resilience or grit you've seen during transitions into a new country and or a new system?
So pivotal moments or moments that have stuck with me is when I do immigration hardship evaluations and I sit down with them, with the people that I'm helping via these evaluations, and they're like, it's a visible sigh of relief, like, I can actually be honest and open. Like, first of all, hablas español. Let's start there. And they're able to be like, you know what? You're gonna hear me out. I can tell because I'm able. I mean, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. Like, I've been a mental health clinician since 2016, so I'm able to build rapport quickly. But that aside, the ability for me to do that isn't as important as the fact that they can feel heard and they feel like they can talk about what's been troubling them and what's really been grieving them. It brings them to tears, but again, the what always stands out is just that like you can see the sense of relief when they start talking about their story.
Excellent transition to segment two, which today's focus is international college athlete experience through the lens of immigration. And so to give some context here, I remember being on Instagram now at this point, had to be 3 months ago, 4 months ago. This is right when the travel bans, began, right when, visa appointments were being delayed, if not eliminated. And I'm like, yo, I went to Instagram and TikTok. I'm like, yo, those that work in college sport, those that work international ed on college campuses, check in on your international athletes. They're not okay.
Hmm.
They're not
Hmm.
okay in an environment and at a time where NIL and the rev share and everything else is going on, where international athletes are looking around saying, "What about me? Right? Why can I not
Yeah,
get paid?" Now is not the time
exactly.
to risk your immigration status here in the States, is given the current political standing and climate that we sit in today. And I
Hmm.
kept scrolling, probably day by day, definitely, well, definitely not month to month, but probably the next week. And you were talking something about immigration hardship waivers, which you kind of mentioned just now. And I'm like, yo, there has to be something here. There has to be
Yes.
something here with this immigration, international athletes. Again, we look at the international athlete identity here in the States, and a lot of them, a lot of us as an industry, the world, focus on their athlete identity. But they
True.
are here through a migration system, an immigration system that governs
Hmm.
their ability and existence to be in the States. So before
Yeah.
we talk more about their mental wellness, their mental health, I would love for you to break down in a similar ways to how you broke down with me. Like, what does it mean? Like, what is an immigration hardship waiver? Like, give us some context that those that are listening can use as shared language as we move forward through this conversation today.
Gotcha. Okay. So when people are petitioning to have legal status in the US, usually they're going through an immigration attorney. Now, I have partnerships with various immigration attorneys where I'm able to work alongside them. So please, if anyone ever says, "Oh, I'm just gonna, get an immigration hardship evaluation and see where that takes me," please don't do that because it is part of a package and a packet that is then presented to the courts. Now, the various, I guess, some examples of immigration hardships would be people seeking asylum, people so there's different types. There's U visa, there's VAWA. So VAWA is Violence Against Women Act. So if people are domestic violence survivors, they would fall into that category. U visa is people that are have witnessed a crime or survived a crime and then are wanting to work with law enforcement to bring whoever committed the crime to justice. So those are those are a few of the avenues that people can apply for legal status via the immigration hardship evaluations.
And how common is this process? Like, is this something that's very well known in immigrant communities? Again, I'm asking as someone who's still learning myself, but what's the knowledge level amongst folks who may be seeking or benefit from the service?
I wish there was more knowledge about it because there isn't. I mean, the mere fact that people don't realize immigration attorneys can be helpful, the mere fact that people don't know that immigration attorneys can provide a free consultation. So it's
Mm,
little stuff like that. You would hope and you would wish that there would be more dialogue about the how to as opposed to just like the end goal. Like, okay, we want legal status. Yes, correct. But how do we get there in a
mm,
timely, effective type of way?
it's good. So again, we're talking about international college athletes here, right? And then for those that are unfamiliar, of course, they secure a student visa, most of whom are on an F1, to come study and compete as students or college students and college athletes in the NCAA ecosystem. All right, now that that's out the way. Given what you know about your own both story, obviously immigrant communities you work with, but also beginning to see some parallels, I might argue, in international college athletes experiences migrating to the United States. What are some of those parallel experiences, whether that be mental, psychosocial, emotional, that you're witnessing from your work, that may also show up when these international athletes come into the States for the first time?
So a lot of the, whether it be international students, international athletes, or immigrants in general, there has been a high rate of anxiety and depression. Anxiety because of the pressure to want to overperform. Let's put it what it is. Let's say what it actually is. To overperform, the anxiety of being in a space that you're unfamiliar with, a lot of times in a space where you don't even speak the same language. Or even when you're wanting to surpass a standard that may not even have been established here for you yet. So that's actually very common, along with depression. Because if a lot of people come here not knowing not a one person, nobody. And so they may retreat to self-isolation and start sleeping more, not eating as much or overeating. So it's stuff like that that starts becoming a common mental health challenge for them.
So I'm glad I'm laughing because this part about nutrition is one that anyone to see me either post or talk, I'm like, yo, no more potlucks. No more potlucks on college campuses. We just bring food and just hope people be, establish community,
Right?
whatever. But there needs to be
Yeah.
conversations about what we're talking about today, mental wellness, right? Conversations
Yeah.
about how to find food either native to their home and or very similar
Yeah.
to helping their transition. And so you mentioned both anxiety and depression, right? Pressure to overperform, right? Obviously, anxiety, anxious nerves being in a new system. But for many international athletes, right, their primary point of contact has been their coach throughout the recruitment process.
Sure.
Maybe their teammates, right, their incoming class that they may be coming in with. It might be an academic advisor, maybe not, depending on the school setting that they're at. So for those people who are those points of contact for these international athletes, what do you recommend in regards to helping them to identify different language barriers, cultural differences that may be impacting their mental health, either through, anxiety or depression, again, as they're transitioning and or returning to the United States?
I think the one of the things that's very important is for the staff, the advisors, the coaches to build rapport. So then if a student is having a tough time, they'll feel comfortable even going to them about it and normalizing language like, "Hey, I feel overwhelmed," or like modeling that, like, "Man, we have a game tomorrow, and I feel stressed out or overwhelmed," or whatever language feels most comfortable to them. But being able to create a space where people feel okay to acknowledge that they're having a tough time, that's the most important thing right there. Because if you're not creating that environment, people aren't because of mental health stigma, people won't even address any of it.
Okay, let's talk about it. We're gonna talk about it. That's why we on this conversation today. Because I hear you say establish rapport, right? Obviously, the environment matters, and I agree. But these coaches have spent, I don't know, maybe a year, 2 years recruiting said athlete to come to their campus. And the type of rapport they're building throughout the recruitment process is definitely different than the type, well, I would assume it's different than the type of rapport needed to be able to identify when to refer out.
True,
So let's talk about it.
true.
So when you say rapport, like what does that mean outside of
Mm,
maybe the recruitment process because you know what recruitment goes. You say anything to get the athlete to come there.
well, true,
They're trying
true,
to
true,
win.
true. Yeah. So I guess the way I view rapport is having people feel comfortable with telling you anything. Like
Mhm.
opening up, like being a listening ear. Rapport doesn't necessarily have to mean like, oh, you're gonna do something about what they're sharing. It's just more so having them be somebody like a safe person, a safe space for them. So then they're not the capacity of them to unravel isn't as high. I mean, that's oversimplifying it, but being able to provide that support first starts with having somebody to talk to. I mean, yes, a therapist is ideal, but at least anybody that will hear them out and will have an understanding, a foundational understanding of how this transition affects them and how hard it is.
Good. Okay. Like I said, we warming up. Another thing that people, have talked about, particularly within both academic research and through, I think, increasing amounts of international athlete orientation is culture shock, right?
Yeah,
And so, given your work and given your expertise, especially, how does culture shock or maybe even cultural adjustment typically manifest? And what practical steps can institutions take to ease that process and sometimes maybe mitigate that process, recognizing that new is new, right? If it's new, it's going to be different. But
exactly.
what can colleges and universities do, athletic departments do to help, address that head on?
Well, it's gonna sound so, I mean, you talk about potlucks, mixers. I know that's so cheesy, but when I used to work in higher education, and a lot of times those mixers really created a sense of community, or even those student organizations where their emphasis or their bond is on being international students, international athletes. It actually goes a long way because the thing is, what's part of the culture shock is feeling alone and like not a one person will understand where you're coming from because literally they may not know where you came from.
True, that's true. What I mean, but given again, and we'll take the mixers and potlucks. That might be the title of this podcast episode. But what types of questions might you recommend, or even like
Hmm.
those that staff members per se, right? What
Sure.
observations might folks be able to make, as a fly on the wall, for like a better words,
Yeah.
in that environment? Like how do we set that environment up to be productive so that folks do feel welcome, feel like they have a place to belong, etc.
I mean, again, I think it's genuine interactions, albeit from the coaches talking to their athletes, whether it be faculty and staff facilitating mixers with no food. But just that type of stuff. I think the key word is, well, two, intentional and genuine. Because people, you can tell who's being genuine and who's not.
Sure,
It's easy to tell, no matter what country you came from. And
sure.
so, being able to lead with that, and also, yes, having them have them being the faculty and staff, the teacher, the professors, the coaches, having some baseline training on what to look out for. Like, okay, if this
Mhm.
person is oversleeping for practice, let me check in a little bit. Like we don't have to like sound the alarm, but let's say if they're cheerful, let's say if their anxiety or their nerves about a game is out of proportion to what it used to be. So stuff like that is helpful to know as well. But they have to be trained on that. So, and it doesn't have to be like an hours long training. It could be an hour training. Spero actually does it to really break down what you need to look out for. Because at the end of the day, like we can acknowledge there is a change, there's culture shock, it's new. But what do you do if and when someone is actually having a mental health crisis? Because from my experience, and because it's fact, people who are in the Black and Brown community, underrepresented pops, we present our mental health challenges can be presented in a different way than our white peers. That's just how it is. I mean, science, it is what it is. And so being able to have culturally competent training where everyone is on the same page as to what we're looking out for, that's important.
This platform, this podcast is not the place to be humble whatsoever. And so you try to slide in, Spero has training. Tell us more. Go ahead, tell us more. Like what again, what does that look like?
Okay,
For those that
okay,
are
okay,
interested and
okay.
want to bring you on to their schools, to their environment, etc. What does that look like?
Definitely. So some entities call it first aid or mental health 101 or stuff like that. But so I take the framework of what are we looking out for as an individual who may be having a mental health crisis, but the added layer is they're in an underrepresented population though, because that looks different. An example, if a Spanish speaking person is saying estoy nerviosa, that means with the she pronoun she's a female identified saying they feel anxious. Or if somebody's saying, man, my nerves are really bad today. Okay, they may feel anxious. Or if someone's like, you know what, I ain't got it today, or I don't even feel like getting up from bed. So there's certain things that are different that you need to be attuned to. And so what Sparrow does is in it depends on the time and the structure, but call it we've done it in 3 hours. That's like the sweet spot of being able to break down, okay, let's get a fundamental understanding of what is a mental health challenge. Like step one, what is anxiety? What is depression? What is PTSD? Like let's start there and then build from that, build an understanding from that. And what resources can you provide? If someone's like, hey, I'm having thoughts about ending it all. What can you say? What can you do legally, ethically? Like there's a lot of layers to it. So that's something that Spare does.
I'm listening and also beginning to formulate many different questions that are coming to mind right now. And where I think I want to take this conversation, I think it's appropriate right now, is that right now it's crazy. It's insane. I'm not gonna say the C word. It's insane.
Hello.
It's insane. And it's insane for a number of different reasons. Again, primarily government impact, influence. Well, I'll use those two words right now. And so right now, it's not even just about right culture shock and being in a new country. It's not even about navigating a new system and trying to find food, nutrition, weights, water, or whatever that may. Well, it's going to be different from back home. It's not even about being far away from family, loved ones, friends, etc. Right? Like right now, there's legit fear that like either you can get deported from this country, you may not be able to enter this country, right?
Mhm.
Not having the same experience or at least equitable experience to your peers at your
Yeah,
institution. And so that's like layered on top of just being new or even returning to the States.
exactly.
Where do we start, right? How do we start?
You.
I think something I'm thinking about more and more often now is like because there's a lot happening, right? My
Yes, there's a
international athlete,
lot.
well, not those at the school I work at, not Stanford, just in general, those I've talked to outside of Stanford and everywhere else, are asking, like, how do I get paid? And I'm like, yo, like, right now is the time to figure out how to get an NIL check. Right now is the time to figure out one, to get your degree and figure out what's next. Should you want to stay in the United States, go back home or to a third country, right? There's
Yeah,
more important things, I would argue, that we need to worry about and protect rather than getting an NIL check. Now, that's not to
yeah,
say that an NIL money and the money that you are deserved and have earned as a college athlete, and the fact that you cannot get that because of your immigration status here, one is not fair, but two also adds to the layers of anxiety, depression, everything else you mentioned of being a student, international student here in the United States right now. So it's saying all of
exactly.
that and recognizing where we are as a country and as a world right now.
Hmm.
Where can one start? And that's what I'm moving
Oh,
this conversation right now.
well, so I think one place we can start is trying to eradicate mental health stigma. Like, how can we chip away at this notion that if you're having a having a mental health challenge, then you're not strong, then you're not worthy, then you're not capable. We have to start there. And I mean, and that's like a big idea. Like, okay, we're gonna eradicate mental health stigma. Yes, it's a big undertaking, but there are little facets that can be, I mean, little parts that can be chipped away at. So, for example, in a school setting, when I used to work in higher education and I was part of marketing initiatives within a therapeutic setting, at said institution, being able to create programs, advertise them, get the word out in a way that students could readily identify, oh, this is for me. Or, this is a way that I can express myself, or they have therapists that look like me and that can help me because they do have culturally competent training. So I think that's where it starts is people being okay to acknowledge that they're having a struggle. It's so cheesy. And I look, when people are like, oh, acknowledge, it's okay to not be okay. What does that mean? What does that mean? And that literally means being able to sit with and bring people in if needed when you're having some trouble.
I mean, I still work in higher ed, and these I think it's, whether it's because of more awareness, whether it's because younger adults, I guess kids, I guess that point K-12 kids. I don't work with children, so I don't know, but younger adults are seeing psychologists and mental health therapists and whatnot.
Yeah,
But in my experience and from what I'm hearing, right, mental health therapists on college campuses are overwhelmed right now, right? Are booked out
yeah.
weeks and months out right now. And so
Hmm.
I do recognize the stigma part, which we'll come back to. But
Hmm.
recognizing again, you have the coaches, you have the advisors, you even have teammates and everyone else that's around said athletes in that community.
Hmm.
What are some other things in addition to creating, building rapport, right? Even going through a Spero training, first aid training, mental health training. Like, what are some other things that, from a support standpoint, that you would recommend and or encourage folks to think about to better support international athletes right now, in particular, international students as well,
Hmm.
given where we are as a country and as a world?
I think one thing that can be done to support international athletes, students in general, that you don't necessarily need like in-depth training for, is providing the National Crisis Hotline number 988. And I'll literally tell my clients, all right, get out your phone, save this. You can text, call, chat, and you can just be like, hey, I think I'm having a mental health crisis, but I'm not sure. Or, I think I'm having a bad day. I don't know if this is even something I should talk to you about or somebody else. Help me out. It's super informal, which I think helps lessen the pressure and maybe the fear of even using that method of getting support. So that's step one, in my opinion, because and they have in many languages as well, which I think is helpful. So going about it that way is going to be important. Is having like the basis of crisis support.
Love it. I love that answer. I'm definitely something I'll include with this podcast episode. I mentioned some of the things I'm seeing, just again as a both educator, entrepreneur, PhD candidate, whatever. But you're also observing some things, right? As someone who's
Mhm.
familiar, well, someone doing the work that you do, right?
Yeah.
Very familiar and observing what higher ed and college sport is becoming
Mhm.
and not becoming. Like, what are
Mhm.
you seeing from your seat?
Mhm. I'm seeing a lot of uncertainty. People don't know what the hell is happening and they don't know how that's going to affect them today, tomorrow, the day after.
Mm,
It's a lot of, and don't get me started on how this may be part of the plan, but there's a lot of fear.
hmm
And it's just, if people already have a mental health challenge or they have, the genetic disposition to have a mental health challenge, you add what's going on to the mix, that can lead to a mental health crisis. And I think it's helpful to also view things as levels. Okay, there's mental health crisis, yes, but then
True.
there's points when people are just having a tough time and it's still disrupting their everyday life and it's still worth addressing. So it's not just people that, are like super not wanting to live. It's also people that are so depressed they don't even want to get up out of bed. How are they going to get to class if they don't want to rise up from bed? Because they're so
Yeah.
depressed or they're so anxious that they freeze up on the court. It's stuff
Mhm.
like that that also needs to be addressed.
Thinking this is good. I hear what you're saying. Here, I mean, obviously, I'm listening right now, but even diving deeper into the words here, because I get the mixture, the belonging piece makes sense. I get the report piece. I appreciate the part about when the folks are coming over here to compete, right? Pressure to overperform, which I love that language. What I'm thinking about, and it's going back or returning back to the stigma statement you made, or eradicating the stigma, is how we make those services more approachable, how we
Mm,
make those services more culturally sensitive, how
mhm.
we train, going back to your trainings, right? Staff to be able to have that conversation in a way that is that centers humanity, truth be told,
Yeah.
and care. But how do we make services more approachable and culturally sensitive? And I'm trying to
Mhm.
think more practical here and probably more in the weeds, and you could definitely help both brainstorm and or provide examples from your own work.
Sure.
But like what that looks like, right? I think part of it could be obviously having flyers in different languages. I think that's low-hanging fruit. But are there other things outside of, well, definitely need to hire more former international students to be staff members on our college campuses for sure.
True.
That needs to happen as well. And those that are multilingual for sure as well. But in addition to those things that are very much like HR driven, what does it look like? Right. And again, it might be
Mhm.
brainstorming right now, but it might be some ideas you already had
Same.
or things you already done. But like I'm trying to think like how can I in my role, right, make that service or make those services more culturally relevant, culturally sensitive?
Okay, okay. So, from my experience and what I have done with initiatives on marketing initiatives, but at the end of the day, we have to get the word out there of the services that are being offered to the populations that are being targeted. That sounds so like technical, but I mean, hey. So, something that I worked with is let's make sure this is representative. So, if we're trying to help Black and Brown folks, let the flyer represent that. But let's be intentional though. Let's not have a Black and brown person like displaying being in a mental health crisis and then the therapist being a white person. So also, I mean, being very intentional about that because that can say stuff without saying stuff. And so, and even having these in spaces that people usually hang out around, and that's just in general. Like, you're not going to put these flyers at the dean's office, per se. So, it's stuff like that I think being able to have a marketing strategy that is aligned with cultural competence is going to be important. And, I actually want to back up for a little bit or backtrack because when you were sharing, like, your accolades, like PhD candidate, entrepreneur, and all these things, you're like, and whatever. I think there's something about people of color that we're taught to downplay all of our successes. It's like, oh, well, I'm doing that. Okay, cool. But what more can I do? And I think that translates to athletes or even, international athletes and international students, because it's just like, okay, I'm here, I'm getting all A's, but that's not good enough. I should be doing more. And what does more look like? So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because the reason it stood out is because I do
Good.
that too. Like I downplay everything that I do. And people have to be like, wait, Catherine, but you're actually doing a lot. Not even like a lot as in like spreading myself too thin, but a lot and I'm succeeding. I'm making a name for myself. Spero is thriving. So it's my kid is thriving. So all of those things, I guess I just wanted to reflect or share that that's something that I have had to catch myself with too.
Listen here, Catherine, I'm trying to take everything off my plate. Actively. I only shared that because I see it from different angles. That's the only reason I shared it. I'm trying to take things off.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take things, but I appreciate the reflection back because you're exactly right. Especially because one thing that I'm continuing to learn is that I explain this, international college athletes who are coming to the States, right? They're coming to compete and study, whatever. A lot of these athletes, very similar to immigrants and or the children of immigrants, are first generation US students.
Hmm.
And so the pressure of like either they're leaving their family and having to perform on the field or the court or the competition surface, having to get the good grades, right, to represent and really come back to their home country and say, yo, I did it, mom, dad, family, whatever, village, whatever.
Yeah,
Right. So I'm glad you reflected that back because I think that is something that is unspoken about in regards to like they're not just students and athletes, like again, they're first generation, right? And so everything around first
yeah,
generation students that we talk about on college campuses that must need to also
exactly.
apply to this population.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think not only can it be because I mean it's not a one size fits all. Not
Sure.
only can it be external pressures, but the pressure that people put on themselves in addition to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you one more question before we move to segment three. And because we talked about the transition, again, you mentioned anxiety, depression, but I know, and you know as well, that there's ongoing transition, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not a one-time thing, right? There's going to be different
Correct.
moments throughout the year, whether that be new legislation coming from DC, whether it be different visa updates or, yeah, it's called updates or revisions, right? There's different times of year that there's multiple transitions happening at the same time, and there's a new transitioning happening as well.
Mhm.
So what other types of either challenges or struggles per se might you offer up that we can be more mindful of and cognizant of throughout an academic year, even a calendar year, recognizing that that first transition, either as a new student or returning student, is not the only one that happens throughout their time in the United States.
Mhm. I would urge people to keep an eye out on their students around holidays, around when there's less light outside. Um, Those are the two main ones. Like, okay, you can adjust, you can be completing the transition. I know that sounds so like, okay, what does that even mean? But when there's a holiday, you're not able to go back home. That's tough. That's tough. especially because of the cultural weight that some of these holidays have. If you would tell me I can't go to Colombia for El 24, which is we celebrate Christmas on December 24th. Back in the day, I would have been in shambles. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And so keeping that in mind also is important. Um, and also knowing that chemically or physiologically, however you want to phrase it, when the days are shorter, people's depression can increase. I mean, yeah, it could be seasonal affective disorder, or it can just be plain old, I'm tired because it's dark out, I want to sleep. And that can kind of lead into a little bit of a depression or lack of motivation, I mean, at a minimum.
I'm glad you brought this up. Because we're gonna stay here for a second. You have worked with and continue to work with immigrant communities from multiple countries.
Correct.
How, as a clinician, do you check yourself to ensure that you're supporting them in a way that's equitable to their experience and their culture, given their culture and country of origin, etc.? That makes
I
sense.
don't, it does. What I do to check myself is not assume. I would rather ask what may seem like the most silliest question ever, but I would rather that than assume my lived experience is a shared lived experience because it a lot of times it's not, and that's fine. And I could be talking to otro Colombiano and it would not be the same lived experience. And so again, not assuming, and that should be something standard for everybody. Let's not assume. Let's like move with facts and intentions and purpose. Like let's do that instead.
I asked that almost rhetorically because I think a big issue with college sport right now is that the assumption that all international athletes are a monolith, and they're not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think we're slowly getting to the place that we're seeing them not as a monolith by maybe country of origin, maybe global north, global south. But I think
Sure.
racially, we have a long way to go.
Uh-huh.
We have a long way to go. That's why I asked that question for those who are listening. Before we jump to segment three, one last question here. Obviously, don't assume it's definitely one piece of actionable advice. But if you could give one more piece of advice to either higher education leaders and or those who are working in the athletic department to better support international college athletes, both today and in the future, what would that advice be?
Lead with genuine empathy because you can be empathetic and it be you just fake it till you make it. And not only that, but lead with being humble because being able to acknowledge you don't know it all creates space for connection. But if like, oh no, like, this student experienced it this way and this student's probably experiencing it that way, they're from the same country. No. So I think that's a piece of advice. And also having the cultural competent training and the mental health first aid training, like that's very important.
I love it. Segment three as we begin to turn the corner and close this out. So we definitely learned a lot more about you today. And I also appreciate things that you shared today, especially around, supporting international students, staff for that matter, international athletes, with genuine care, intention, right purpose, deliberation, etc. I
Mhm,
want to turn it back on you and turn to you, honestly,
mhm.
and ask you, how can I best support you? How can the Walk with TB community best support you? And not just you as a human, but also you in your work as well.
Okay. I think one way to support Spero is by encouraging everybody to sign up for the newsletter. I mean, something that people can do to support me is help me end mental health stigma. Because that's what's getting in the way, y'all. It really is. Like, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but in at my household, we can't talk. Well, we're getting better about it now. But back in the day, we couldn't talk about feeling sad or anxious. We could talk about feeling angry and maybe disappointed, but not sad or like, overwhelmed and stuff like that. So I think that being my cultural lens is what has guided my work and my yeah, the purpose of Spare to begin with. Now, I do it in very many lands, like with speaking engagements about cultural felt safety, with my coaching program where I talk about resiliency, get resiliency, where I help people build skills to end burnout. Because a lot of times people overperform because of how they feel they need to show up culturally. So it's stuff like that that people can do to I guess that's kind of intertwined with me and Sparrow, but at the end of the day, you know. I live and breathe my business, so there's that.
As you should, as you definitely should. And for those that want to get in contact with you, where can they find you? How can they get in contact with you?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Spero psych Psych. And then also on my website, same thing, Spero psych Psych.org. So those are the two best ways, and I have contact information for each of the initiatives that I have. So that's one of the ways they can get a hold of me.
I know you told me, but we're not gonna, before we close out, the meaning behind Spero. Why Spero?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, I love sharing that. So sparrow in Latin means hope. Specifically, while I breathe, I hope. A lot of times people are like, dang, I don't see the other side of this. I don't see the other side of burnout. I don't see what work-life balance can be. I don't see the other side of seeking help and actually receiving it in a culturally responsive way. And so with Sparrow, it has been my task and my calling to work within those spaces to help people find the hope that they thought they lost.
Snapping over here. I like that. I like that again. I like that.
Yes.
Well, we got one more question.
Okay.
Maybe another one if it comes to mind. Maybe a fun
Sure.
one. Ooh, this is a big one. Bigger one, I feel like. I think one that
Okay.
requires a little bit more reflection, maybe. Who
Sure,
knows?
sure.
But looking back across your experience, really experiences, is there a story or a moment that has stayed with you? One that maybe highlights why intentional, deliberate, genuine support matters. It matters a lot for international college athletes, international students, immigrant communities, especially
Hmm.
right now.
Hmm. I would, flesh out a little bit more about okay, let me back up. A pivotal moment for me in working with immigrant communities, specifically immigrant students, first gen and stuff like that, as I shared earlier, was acknowledging, or I'm not sorry, recognizing that somebody was having a mental health crisis and that presented and looked different than their white peers. And so knowing that and then understanding that advocating for that came at a cost for me. And so doing so anyway. And so I think that is a pivotal point or something that really stands out as it pertains to immigrant communities, student athletes, and international students in general is being able to recognize that not, first of all, not everyone's going to present a mental health challenge the same. And also, underrepresented pops are just going to present differently as well. So I think that individual, that student, they'll always be a reminder to me of like, wow, people can slip through the cracks because of lack of culturally competent training.
Well said. Very well said. Well, let's check this out. I know you're doing a lot more speaking engagements here recently, and will continue to do more in the future. And many people are continuing to learn more about who you are, the work that you do, what matters to you, your purpose, etc.
Mhm.
But as we close out, what is one thing that you want our listeners, and your listeners for that matter, to know and to remember about you?
Ooh, hmm. Gosh, that's a really great question. Um, I think one thing that I could say I would want to leave people with is what you get is what you see. I'm not just talking the talk and not walking the walk. I'm not just saying stuff for my own edification. I'm actually trying to impart change, trying to um, help people shift people's perspectives on various issues and empowering them to take ownership and agency of their life. So that's what I would leave people with, that if you ever if if we ever come cross paths professionally in a business, whether it be a speaking engagement, my coaching program, a training, Spare will give you what I say it has been able to do.
Mic drop. Definitely a mic drop. Well, Catherine, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been a blessing. I'm definitely leaving this conversation not only with actionable takeaways, but also more questions, which I think is a testament to not just who you are, but also how you continue to challenge systems, challenge people to think different,
Mhm,
right? Systems to move different,
mhm,
policies to adjust and to reframe to be more equal and or equitable depending on context and whatnot.
mhm.
So for that, I want to say thank you for your work. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your leadership and service. And I'm excited. I think this is the first conversation of many more collaborations and many more moments that will come together to create a better world, not just for those that are
Yes,
currently living, but for current immigrants, future immigrants, current international athletes, future international athletes, because they're certainly welcome in this country, the United States of America, for sure.
absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
We have fun on Walk with TFB, man. For everyone else, man, thank you for tuning in to an impromptu yet very timely and needed conversation about mental health and mental health for immigrant communities, mental health for international college athletes. Again, this is not coincidence. Where we are as a country right now, where we are as a community right now, is one that needs this conversation, right? And needs actions
Mhm.
from this conversation to better support those who have made a choice to come to the U.S. And I think as a result, we have a responsibility as a community and as a collective to make sure they are well equipped, but also healthy and whole if and when they decide they want to leave this country. And should they decide they want to stay, again, y'all are more than welcome here. Please stay. We want you to be here.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Seriously. For everyone else, thank you again for another episode of Walk with TB. We'll check in soon. But as always, until then, walk with me.